Hi everybody, I'm Bill Geissele and thanks for watching tonight. We're live streaming here from North Wales, Pennsylvania. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and there's a YouTube link on Air 15. So the way this works tonight is I'm going to go over our new products that we're launching at SHOT Show 2017, and you are more than welcome to respond on any of those venues with comments, and we're going to look at those comments, and those comments are going to be asked by Joe Plunkett here, who's coordinating all this. He's going to ask me those comments, and I'll try to answer them as best as possible. So just fire off, and anything's game, okay? It doesn't have to be on these new products, but if you have general questions about Geissele or Geissele's products, please send us a note there. So for 2017, we have a bunch of stuff. We love releasing new stuff at SHOT Show. SHOT Show is an industry show where everybody launches their new things. It's a big time for meeting other people in the industry, meeting a lot of people. Our booth is always very busy, and we got a bunch of new things. So let me start with ALG. One of the first new products that we have.
Bill, if I can interject, we got a lot of the same questions. Is there an ETA on Geissele lowers or rifles?
Well, actually, I was going to save that for the end.
I figured I'd get some of these people.
All right, so I'm going to say that at the end. So I'm not going to try to trick you into watching to the end, but I'm going to trick you to watching the end. All right, so I am going to trick you. Let me put that in the beginning so you're not disappointed. Okay, but we will answer that question toward the end of the broadcast. Okay. So let's start out with very thin grease. Very thin grease is a quadruple zero grease. Grease it has an NGLI grade, and the grades you normally buy in like your auto store for greasing your wheel bearings or U-joints, they're generally NGLI #2, National Grease Lubricating Institute, and that refers to its thickness and consistency. And you can go up, but those are kind of rare. You can even go up to something called a block grease, which is basically looks like a cinder block of grease. It's very hard used to lubricate some industrial machinery. But going down, it starts getting thinner. And it's not so much the oil that's thinner, it's the carrier of the oil. And you can go down to NGLI 1, 0, 00, 000, and I've never really seen a quadruple zero grease. But what we wanted to do was take our awesome Go Juice oil and put it in a format that you can lubricate slideways, your cam pin on your AR-15, places where you don't want the oil to run off. There's an application for oil as itself, in the small mechanisms or dripping a drop down next to the receiver wall so it goes into the pins on your trigger. But there's areas where you don't want the lube to come off and you don't want it to be a big mess. And that's where very thin grease comes into. And it has a great consistency. We're going to do a little test here, and I could show you what it's like. But one thing I want to clear up, because I wasn't clear when I introduced this. One thing about Go Juice is that it's innocuous and it's not hazardous. This was a big thing to me when we decided to design Go Juice. Now, we didn't do it in-house. We have a consultant team of chemists who did this. We don't have lubrication engineers in-house. But what this is I didn't want it to be hazardous. With your guns, you're lubricating your gun, it's on your hands. You lubricate your gun and you sit down to eat lunch and you eat a sandwich and you're ingesting this stuff. And I never liked some of these things that have hazardous chemicals in it. So one of the things with Go Juice is I didn't want it to be hazardous. I didn't mention that with very thin grease, you'll see that there is a tiny little diamond with an exclamation point in it. This is an indication that it is the least hazardous of anything that has anything that could be considered hazardous, where Go Juice here has no diamond in it. Okay, so what are the things in very thin grease different from Go Juice? One is a type of barium salt that's in about 1.5% concentration, and that's used for corrosion resistance. Okay, it's a barium type of salt. The other thing is something called BHT. And if you look on the SDS on very thin grease, which will be put up on the ALG website on Monday, it's got this huge long chemical name, all right? BHT is a food additive, all right? It's in food. It's used to preserve it. It also is used to preserve oils and greases. It's also used in some pharmaceutical products. It's got antiviral tendencies, and there's actually whole medicines made from BHT. So those are the two things that's in very thin grease. So when you see that little exclamation point, that's what it means.
Got a lot of coal order shout outs.
All right, sounds good. Okay, ALG has a Galil trigger this year. It's very similar to the AKT, but it's made for the IWI Galil. It's a very nice single stage pull. We'll have prototypes there on the table there at SHOT Show. We probably won't be in full production until March or April, but we do have a specific trigger for the IWI Galil. We also have a new ACT, which will be out on the table. We're changing some things around. No, I'm sorry, the AKT. This is the AK-47 trigger. We're changing some things around, and we're coming out with a more standard trigger. I believe the retail price is $42. It's better than stock, but it's not like the AKT trigger, which is a very awesome 3-pound trigger. This new AKT is slightly heavier and it's got a longer pull. But one thing you don't have to do with it is, as you know, with the AKT, you have to fit the trigger with a small dowel pin, a roll pin, so that it fits your safety. Because these safeties on these AK-47s are all over the place. The heights are very inconsistent. So when you have a performance trigger, high performance trigger, like the AKT, you got to fit it so your safety works. But in this new one, you're not going to have to do that. It's a true drop-in. I'm pretty sure the retail price is $42. Any questions, Joe?
Everybody wants to know the difference between the AKT and the AKTE.
Okay. The AKT has an even shorter pull than the AKT, okay? And it's also hard lubed. It's going to be nickel Teflon coated, and it has hard lubing toward it. So it's an even lighter and crisper trigger than the AKT. It still needs to be fit to the safety, which is an easy process, and you can't damage the trigger the way we've designed it. All you need is a small file, and there's instructions with how to do it. With all the room in an AK receiver, it's really easy to do, and if for some reason when you fit it you go too far, it's no big deal. We include another of these roll pins. You just knock it out with a small punch and start over again, so you can't ever damage anything. Let's move to the SSP. SSP is a Super Speed Precision. That is Geissele's new single stage trigger. We've been known for 2-stage triggers, combat triggers, national match triggers for years. We've been in business since 2004, so it's been over a decade. We've never made a single stage trigger. We have made the S3G, which is a high performance roll trigger. A roll trigger, when you start pulling the trigger, the weight pulls up, comes up to a plateau, and then rapidly releases. It's awesome for quick firing and quick follow-up shots. But when you're trying to do real precision shooting with it, as that trigger glides back, a lot of rifle shooters don't like that. Pistol shooters, they love it. It's very highly desirable for a bullseye pistol shooter to have his .45 tuned by a national match gunsmith with a roll trigger. It's highly desired in .45 bullseye shooting. For rifle shooters, if you're doing carbine work, at shooting quickly, it's great. I love the S3G. It's one of my favorite triggers. But we wanted something that was more like a traditional single stage trigger like you'd have on your Remington 700. And that's where the SSP comes in. It's completely new. None of the parts are interchangeable with our other triggers. It's got about a 3 to 3.5 pound break. It's icicle crisp. It's going to be a reliable trigger. We include another trigger spring with it that's going to bring that weight up to 4.5 pounds. And
people want to know how much the SSP is going to retail for.
$240. Okay, so we made some changes with pricing this year with our triggers because there was a lot of confusion. We had things all over the place. So what we did is we raised the price on 3 triggers, we lowered it on 4. So just about everything is $240. So 3 triggers went up slightly and 4 triggers came down slightly. So it doesn't matter what you choose, whether you want a super dynamic bow, whether you want a super tricon with its great modified bow that's great for shooting with gloves, whether you want a standard M4 bow, an SSA, an SSAE, an SDC, they're all $240.
What about the G2S and the high speeds?
The G2S stays the same at $165. It basically has the equivalent performance of the SSA, made from high quality S7 tool steel, but we don't put into it all the 100% magnetic particle checks. Has a different way of holding the hammer spring in. There's no laser marking, but basically after 200 rounds, you can't tell the difference between the SSA and the G2S, and it's a great trigger at $165. The high speed stays the same.
I had a lot of questions about the MCX MPX.
Okay. These 2 SIG rifles, we found that they require a different trigger than our normal SSA and SSAE type triggers, or even our high speed. The MPX cycles very quickly and it's extremely hard on triggers. The velocity of the hammer coming back will actually wear into the disconnector and the trigger will not last too long. The MCX is much better. There isn't much of a problem with it, but it does move faster than an AR-15. So what we've done is it's a trigger that we've developed, and it's different. It's different than the SSA and SSAE, and we're going to call it the SSAX, and it's designed for extremely hard use situations. Basically, if you put the SSAX in your gun, you could absolutely abuse it. This is my design goal. Okay, never lubricate it, never do anything to it. And I'll give you an example. If you've ever seen these Somali pirates, all right, these guys who take over these ships, you know, off the coast of Somalia, and you look at their AK-47s, they're completely rusted. There's not a drop of oil on it. You wonder how these things even work. My goal is that a Somali pirate could abuse an AR-15 with the SSAX in there, and their grandkids would still be shooting it. That's my design goal, okay? Now, this SSAX has our new nano weapon DSL coating on it, and we're using these SIG guns as the launch of it. Now, these SIG triggers are slightly different. They have a bridge for the hammer. So when the hammer comes back, the hammer will hit the bridge and stop, and this is important to making these triggers last in this gun. And you may have seen some communication from SIG here lately, where SIG is sending out a new bolt carrier with a firing pin safety for everybody with the MCX. And there's been some discussion about what SIG is going to do with our customers that have the SSA or SSAE, because the firing pin safety in that SIG gun sits up too high for the SSA hammer to actuate it. And basically what SIG has told me is that if you're a Geissele customer, you tell them that, and they're going to send you a bolt carrier assembly with a firing pin safety that is configured to work with whatever Geissele trigger you have. So if you have an SSA and you're using an MCX, they'll send you a bolt carrier that will work with that, okay? But, you know, we're coming out with this new trigger, and it doesn't mean that if you have an MCX that your SSA won't work. This one will work better. MPX is a different story. It's kind of hard on triggers, and this new SIG trigger will work much better in it.
I had a couple, well, 2 questions. One, people are wondering about the Somali Pirates endorsement.
They impressed me with these AK-47s that they never maintained. They looked like they threw them off their boat and then came back a year later to pick them up. So I was impressed with how the gun supposedly worked, and it made an impression on me, that's all.
The MPX, the MPX trigger, will we have one available in an SSAE 3.5 count configuration?
I think we should. I think so. Yeah, for sure. We'll make sure of that, actually. I'll make sure that when we launch those guys, I'm just waiting for the bridge. We had this all dialed in. These were supposed to be here at SHOT Show, but the bridge needed a design change. We had it done. You know, it's a sheet metal part, so the tooling's fairly expensive for it, and there was something I didn't like, so we had to go back. Now we got to redo the tool. I wasn't going to launch it with that. Joe, maybe we can bring a couple of these to shot and have them out on the table for people to see, because we have prototype bridges, we just don't have production bridges.
Okay, good. Make a note of that. A lot of questions about the bayonet mount. These are probably Polo Warrior questions if I had to guess.
Okay. You know, if you have do we have one around here? I don't think so.
Give us a minute, we'll see if we can track it
Okay.
down for you.
Well, you know, an M4 carbine, you have the ability to mount a bayonet to it. And, you know, I guess in the modern military, you don't want to need to mount your bayonet, but I remember reading Black Hawk Down, and Black Hawk Down was actually the book. It was written by a reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and when the book was written, it came out in installments in the Philadelphia Inquirer on the front page. So you're basically able to read the whole book on the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's amazing to me they even published this thing. I think they did it because the writer, I think, was a writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Inquirer is an extremely liberal newspaper. But they published this book on there, and one of the things that was said in there is that as our guys were running out of ammunition, they kind of wished that they had, you got a bayonet?
Here, we're looking for the bayonets.
Okay. That they wished that they had their bayonets with them, and they didn't have their bayonets. So when you take an M4 carbine and you put a rail on it, you don't have the ability to mount a bayonet. So what we wanted to do was make a mount that would fit on our rails, that you'd be able to mount a bayonet to it. And that's what this guy is right here. This is, I don't think it's production ready because it's a fairly complicated part and it would be expensive for me to sell. We can sell them right now, but it's not cheap. It's made out of a solid block of 7075 T6 aluminum. You see how the bayonet mount is machined right into that. It's one piece. It uses the cross bolts and the clamps from our super precision scope mount. Okay, it's very secure. It's able to take the forces of a bayonet if you jab it in something, and then be able to rip back. And our rails, of course, with its really nice barrel nut, it can take the force of a bayonet and the associated forces with stabbing something with that. So I want to make this a more production ready piece so it's not so expensive. That's what I'm trying to do. That's why we haven't sold any of these guys.
All right. A lot of questions about our new rails.
Okay. All right, rails. I started making rails for a military customer, I'm going to say 6 to 7 years ago. And they wanted a rail for their HK416 that wasn't a cheese grater. And we designed a rail for them. It's called the Mark I. And the key feature of the Mark I is it has steel inserts, threaded inserts that go into the rail. And it's real easy to put your accessory rails on. You just basically have 2 screws, screw it in. It has shear lugs on this, so any force inputs from falling, having your flashlight hit the floor, it doesn't go directly into the screws, and it goes into these shear lugs. It's very secure. And you know, that many years ago, there weren't many ways to attach an accessory rail to a handguard. You know, some people had these plate nuts that you basically would put your accessory rail on and then kind of slide your plate nut down and kind of stand on your head as you tried to maneuver it in there and get your screws in. It was extremely difficult to do, especially because these rails, once you put them on, you couldn't get them off the gun. And you had free float rails with quad rails, but you know, the problem with that is they're big, they're sharp. A lot of people don't deburr them correctly or round the edges because it's so difficult. So you basically would have something that is razor sharp in your hand. I've got a beautiful gun with a quad rail I shot in the NDM match at Camp Perry several years ago, and it's a really nice gun. But the rail is razor sharp, and you have to put covers around it. And Mana, I have some Mana covers on it, very nice covers. But you know, when you do that, it's kind of big. And our customers wanted the slim rail and they wanted the secure attachment method. So this is where the steel screws with accessory rails came from. That's the Mark I. The problem with Mark 1 is it's hard to make. Putting these steel screws in is very time consuming. When we started out and we didn't have an automated process to do it, one guy could do 18 rails a day and that's it. So my next iteration of this was what we call the Mark II. And what I did with that is we had the same kind of accessory rails with the two shear lugs that's very secure. But we had plate nuts in the back. But these plate nuts were very lightweight, and I made channels down the rail so the plate nuts would slide down the rail. So you could put your accessory rail on, slide this plate nut in the back, and the plate nut weighed fractions of an ounce, and screw this on. I really like the Mark II. If something happens and you strip a screw, it's no big deal. You cut off the screw, you cut off the accessory rail, you don't damage your rail, it's not damaged. Out comes your damaged plate nut, slide nut, and away you go and you put something else on. It wasn't as comfortable as the Mark I because the sides at 3, 6, and 9 were flat. So when you held this in your hand, you had these flat sides. So I decided to make the Mark III. It's exactly like the Mark II, uses the same slide nuts, but it has rounded sides, and it's a very comfortable rail. They were not that popular, the Mark II and III, because they are heavy. They weigh several ounces heavier than a lot of other rails. And there are some folks who just love it. You put a Mark II on your gun, man, it feels like you can climb a mountain with that thing using it as a ladder, all right, and step on it. But it is heavier. So there was a weight penalty with this, even though these accessory rails were easy to put on and it was a very strong rail. The next rail that we came out with was the Mark IV, and that's gone through many iterations because that's our most popular rail. It uses our barrel nut that's 2.5 inches long. There's no timing involved with the barrel nut. And the Mark IV, its key feature is it has short picatinnies toward the front, toward the muzzle, on 3, 6, and 9. And in the back, it has some sort of attachment method. In the beginning, we used key mod. Or I shouldn't say that. In the beginning, we had the Mark IV Mod 0, which had nothing for an attachment method. It basically had very light holes, and it was extremely light rail, but you could only put things on the Picatinny on the front. Then we came out with a key mod version, and what we have now is our current M-LOK version. That's the Mark IV. It's a very popular rail. Comes in many different lengths. Mark V was the Mark IV key mod without the front rails. So it was slick slided and it was all key mod. And that kind of rapidly went away, this key mod system. We didn't find that it met our requirements for the strength that we had hoped for, I guess. So the Mark V wasn't out that long. So the Mark VI is our quad rail. That's a full quad rail, uses our same barrel nut. I've never made it, but we have it, okay? And our Mark VII is a derivative of the quad of the Mark VI. That is our national match rail. That rail is designed to be heavy. It uses a very solid steel barrel nut. A lot of the weight in the aluminum has been left there. It has a special weight bar that goes along the length that adds rigidity to it, and that the sling swivel also attaches to. This is designed for the new rule changes for CMP National Match High Power, because you can now use quad rails, but there's changes that need to happen. You can't just have a sling swivel that moves wherever it needs to be. It has to be a certain distance from the original spot where the original sling swivel was on the A2 front sight. And that's the Mark VII. It's only designed for high power shooters. The Mark VIII's the next rail, and that basically is a Mark IV M-LOK with no front Picatinnies. That's the Mark VIII. That's a popular rail, so that's an M-LOK rail. And just to go off on a tangent, we found the M-LOK system to be very good. Magpul did an excellent job. We were one of the first companies to see M-LOK, the Magpul design, and it's excellent and it's secure. And I've seen some third-party independent tests of M-LOK, and it's impressive. And that's why we use it basically exclusively other than our Mark I system. The Mark IX is a Mark I-ish rail that we did for a government a government entity. But as we worked with the Mark 9, it morphed into the Mark 10. So the Mark 9 and Mark 10 were very close to each other, but it's a rail that we've never sold on the civilian market. It does not use the Mark 1 system. It uses something similar to it, but it's entirely captive, and you can pop these accessory rails on and off very easily. There's no screws to come loose or anything like that. The Mark 11 and Mark 12 are designs that one of our engineers, and I'll call him by a screen name, the Italian Casanova. Okay, this is in the Italian Casanova's head. Me and him have talked about the Mark 11 and Mark 12, and it's never gone any further. All right, there's not even a folder in our CAD system for these guys, but they exist in our brains. Okay, Mark 13 was designed by one of our engineers here, Neil McKillips, and his screen name is the Flying Dutchman. Okay, and Neil here, he's going to hand me the Mark 13. Come on over, Neil. Come on over and join the fun. All right. Now, this is all Neil's design. All right, Neil's a 3-gun shooter, and he wanted a rail that was smaller in diameter than our current rails, and it was his idea to come up with this rail right here. So what we'll do is I'll show you the differences here. You want to hand me the Mark IV? I'll try to show you right here. You could see it, Diego. If you want to get in on that. If you don't, just shoot from there. You can see the differences in the width. All right. Can you see how the Mark IV is a lot wider, or I should say the Mark 13 is slimmer than the Mark IV. It's a poor choice of words there. It's much slimmer. Neil, what is it?
It's about 0.4 inches slimmer, so almost half an inch slimmer.
Half an inch slimmer, and how much slimmer on the top?
A little bit more than a 1/4 inch.
Okay, so it's a much slimmer rail. It uses the M-LOK system, and it has the quad rails toward the front. And you'll notice that the screws are crankshafted, okay? And you might want to, why do we crankshaft the screws? Basically, we're experimenting with some different ways to increase the stiffness of the rail for our military customers because they put a lot of force on the rail with bipods, slinging up to it, different positions that they're in, and they use targeting lasers that are attached to the rail, and we want to keep it as stiff as possible. And this is a design that we believe is going to make the rail stiffer. I'm not going to say it's going to make it very much stiffer, but I believe it will make it stiffer. So Mark 13 here is a new rail. We'll have this at SHOT Show for everyone to look at.
Some guys want to know what's the rail on the left one more time?
This one?
The other one.
This one?
Yes.
That's a Mark 13.
Mark 13.
Okay, that's Mark 13. This is our Mark 4. Okay. There you go, Neil. Thank you. Now, we're all the way up to Mark 15. So the Mark 14 is a Mark 13 without the front rails. Okay, just like the Mark 8 and the Mark 4. So Mark 14, which we haven't made yet, which we will have soon, that will be a slick slided rail with no Picatinny's toward the front. And the Mark 15 is a DoD rail. I do not think it'll be ever released, but it is a DoD project. So that's where we are with rails. Any other questions, Joe?
People want to know the price of the Mark 13 and the Mark 14.
I'll leave that to you.
So we're starting at $250.
Okay, starting at $250. That's the Mark 13 and Mark 14. Now, they come with our super gas block. All right, this is a 17-4 pH gas block. It has 2 set screws, and it also has a cross pin. This is a really nice gas block, which the retail price is $69. Each Geissele rail comes with a gas block, so you don't have to buy another one. Okay, let's move over to a couple of companies that we've started here. These are new companies.
You want to talk about the 240?
Yeah, I will.
I didn't know if you wanted to
You
talk.
gave it away.
I'm sorry.
All right. Well,
We were still on guys, sorry.
okay, all right.
That's my mistake. Sorry, everybody.
I wanted you guys to guess. Okay, here's a project. We're going to have this on the table too. All right, you know, we don't just do triggers. We do a lot of cool research projects sometimes that morph into actual projects for the U.S. government. And here's one right here. All right, 15-pound block of 7075 T6051 aluminum. And can I have the Night Hunter mount, Abraham? We machined that into this. And I hope you didn't hear what Joe said here, but I wanted you to guess what gun this was for. All right, and this guy here is 1.44 pounds. So it goes from 15 pounds to 1.4 into this beautiful 5-axis machined part right here. You'll notice the integral Picatinnies, they are not screwed on. They are machined in place. Try to guess what gun this is for. But we'll have the gun with this complete setup. This is called the Night Hunter. And this will be on the table, and we will also have one of these machine parts for you to look at. I think this is something of beauty. I'm never going to call myself an artist. I don't think my taste in art are well, they're probably like yours. You like gun stuff that look cool. And this is awesome. And on the table, you can look at this guy and check it out and see all the machining that went into this. Anybody guess it or hear it?
We did. We had a couple good ones from Instagram. We had a couple correct guesses from Facebook.
All right.
More of the guesses are actually incorrect and correct, so I don't know that anybody heard me.
Okay.
So
it's for the M240 machine gun. What this is this mounts to the machine gun, and you'll notice the structure right here. Okay, it's a big hinge, and we have a top cover. And when this mounts to the machine gun, this top cover is latched in place. And on this cover goes a FLIR A-Duns thermal sight. This is a gigantic sight, as big as a football, even bigger than a football. Costs about $70,000. It is a premier piece of thermal imaging equipment. But with this mount called the Night Hunter, you can mount this FLIR on an M240 machine gun and then look through a day optic through this thermal mount. Now, the problem with doing that is everything is above the barrel, and you need to change a barrel on a hot machine gun occasionally, and you also need to flip up the feed tray to load it. So with the flip of a switch, this thermal mount will pop to the side, and you'll be able to change your barrel or flip up your feed tray and load this machine gun and then slap the thermal sight back down and get right back into the fight. So we're going to have a whole setup here on our booth, and I know, you know, I don't own a 240 machine gun. I wish I did. And I know a lot of us won't have much use for it, but you know, our men and women in uniform will, and it'll be really something cool. And you know, our goal is to give the U.S. warfighter overmatched capability, and that's what the Night Hunter does. It's going to make that M240 machine gun an order of magnitude more effective at night fighting.
A few of the guys want to know if we'll have one available for a high point.
You never know. Okay, let's talk about NCC, Nano Composite Coatings. This is a new company that we started to do a coating that in general is known as Picatinny DSL, Picatinny Durable Solid Lubricant. This is a type of coating that the U.S. Army has been working with for the last decade, and we have the equipment here. It will be running very, very shortly, within the next month or so, to do this type of coating. We call it nano weapon. It is not one coating, it is a family of coatings. And these coatings have very unique characteristics, and they're engineered for each part. It's just not something you dip in. It's done in a clean room environment. It's done in a high vacuum chamber. And basically the outer surface of this family of coatings is an amorphous diamond. It's not a DLC, diamond-like carbon coating, totally different. Diamond-like carbon. This is diamond. The diamondoid that this coating is made from is different from what any coating industry uses. Diamondoid is the smallest particles of diamond that still have the characteristics of diamond, and this coating is built up of that. The U.S. government wanted to run an M4 carbine without CLP. The M4 carbine is the greatest weapon on the face of the earth. But one thing that you have to do in order for it to be reliable is it has to be lubricated. If you run it dry, you're going to have nothing but problems. And DLC is an attempt to have that weapon have reduced lubrication. I'm never going to say that DLC is meant to be something, I should say DSL is meant to be a no lube weapon. I disagree with that because it's unnatural. The natural world that God made is lubricated. Everything's lubricated. You know, the human body's lubricated. We have tears. You have your skin produces oil that lubricates things. You have saliva in your mouth that lubricates things. Without lubrication, there's problems. And I disagree with taking a total loss lubrication system like a gun, trying to make it completely dry. But nano weapon can greatly reduce the need for lubrication. And we're going to have different products out there that have this. We're going to have some bolt carriers. We're going to have a bolt carrier that has 450,000 cycles on our cyclic tester on it. 450,000, you'll be able to handle this guy. We're going to have some triggers. ALG has an ACT nano weapon trigger. It's just $6 more than our popular ACT. And the difference is that the trigger is nano weapon coated. And the difference in it, the pull weight's the same, pretty much, about 6 pounds, because it's, you know, uses mil spec springs. But it's snappier. You can tell the difference when you shoot this guy. It's a crisper trigger, and it's only $6 more than our ACT, and ALG is going to have this guy. We also have a display board. One of these days when I do a video on our lubricants, Go Juice, it's really interesting how this was developed. And one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to quantify the lubrication of this. And how do you do that? You know, so many people are like, hey, put it on your gun, and you know, this famous guy and that famous guy and this famous girl, they're all running it and they love it. Okay, but that's not good enough for us as engineers. So we purchased a Phalix pin and V-block tester. What this is, it's a testing instrument used in the lubrication industry, and it takes a calibrated pin and 2 calibrated V-blocks. And you buy these with the tester, you can buy them, and they're made very much the same. And you can test the lubricant by spinning this rod in between these 2 V-blocks, and the V-blocks are loaded. And there's a little container of oil, and the oil is set at a certain temperature, and you can tell how a lubricant will perform with this Phalix pin and V-block tester. The torque of this thing spinning and the loading is all controlled by a computer. All the load data is gone into a computer, and it's completely visual, and we've seen amazing things with this. For instance, some people love lubricating their guns with Mobil 1. They think it's a great lubricant for their gun. The Phalix pin and V-block test, the ASTM version of it. And I'm going from memory here. But basically, you come up to 250 pounds of force on this rotating pin that's submerged. You run it for a time, and you bring it up to 500, you bring it up to 1,000, and you keep going up to 4,500 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and you run it at 4,500 pounds. 4,500 pounds is almost 2 tons of force. And you can see how these pins, how much torque the motor takes to spin this. Mobil 1, the pin shears in half at 500 pounds. That's what Mobil 1 does. A lot of lubricants that we've tested, they fail at near 1,000 pounds. Some are even less. All right. Go Juice is approximately, over the average of the test, is approximately 3,500 pounds. We've had to go up to 4,500 pounds and just stay there. So this is how we quantified Go Juice and went through all the different formulations in order to get lubricity. Lubricity is the inverse of friction. And when we did our coatings, we wanted to coat these pins in this Phalix V-blocks tester and see what the coating did in this. And we developed a special test where we started out at 250 pounds and ran it for 5 minutes. And then it went up to 500 pounds and ran for, I think, 2 minutes, then to 1,000, then to 1,500, and at 2,000 pounds, this would sit there and run for 5 minutes straight on this pin. Okay? So an uncoated pin will run, if my memory serves me right, and this is all on the table, I believe it was 500 pounds, and the pin galled and broke. The next pin was hard chrome plated. You've seen a lot of hard chrome stuff out there, okay? You know, a lot of bolt carriers are hard chromed. All right, that went to 750 pounds before it galled. The next pin was nickel Teflon. And this actually did go up to 2,000 pounds. That's 1 pound of force. And it ran for that 5 minutes. The pin is scarred, okay? The coating didn't flake off, but it's definitely scarred and grooved up. The next one is nitride. It's a nitride. It's a black nitride. And this pin also went to 1 ton of force. And you can tell that it's not galled up at all, but you can tell that the coating, that black has come off of this guy. The nano weapon went to 4,500 pounds, ran for 5 minutes. You can look at these pins at our booth or on the display. That nano weapon pin, you cannot tell the difference on that pin. You can't see one mark on it, one mark. If you hold it up to the light ever so slightly, you may see some little shadow. But it's amazing when you see this. Moving from nano weapon, and I'll go into this. We have Abraham and Moser Survival Equipment. That's our knife company.
Yeah, a lot of questions on nano weapon stuff too. So whenever you're ready, come back.
Okay, all right. I'll go to A&M, then come back. Okay. The Lou Goodman Special Operations Combat Knife. This is coated with nano weapon. This blade right here. PD1, Carpenter PD1, which is the alloy that's used on this, it will rust. And we wanted to protect it from corrosion. So we coated this with nano weapon. Now, when we sharpen these guys, it's not done by hand, all right? This knife is not made at some other knife making facility and then we bring it in and we put our name on it. This is made in-house on knife manufacturing machines. It took me almost 1.5 years to come from Germany, custom knife making, sharpening, and grinding machines. And of course, you don't want to coat the sharp blade with anything. So the plan was we were going to coat the blades and then sharpen it. And you can see what this is like. It's got the sharpened edge right there, okay? So in our sharpening machine, it's actually a 7-axis robot. And this robot will take a blade, it individually measures the blade and measures its profile. Then it comes over to different types of sharpening sanders and polishers and buffers, and it goes over to a sander with a sanding belt, and it takes this thing and it basically will sharpen this guy back and forth, put the edge on, back and forth as this robot. Then it goes through its all motions, and then it comes over and puts this in an exit tray, per se, and it's sharpened. So we don't do it by hand. Well, it just goes through this PD1. All right, it's extremely hard and extremely abrasion resistant steel. And this robot sharpens it lickety split. Well, here we have our first nano weapon coated blades, and the engineer working on it came into my office and said, Bill, we got a problem. We nano coat weapon these blades before we sharpen it, and we can't sharpen the blade. Look. And he brought me this nano weapon blade, and it wasn't sharpened. You could tell that the coating was damaged, and there were some areas that looked like it had worn through, but it was nowhere close to being sharpened. And I was like, you get these times when you're developing products where all your, the Robert Frost, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And that's what happened here, okay? And all of a sudden you get to the end of your whole development process and you got a problem. And I said, okay, increase the pressure and keep going through the sharpening process. So basically, we have to run a nano weapon coated blade 4 times through the sharpener in order to get an edge on it. That's how tough this stuff is. It is not just a cosmetic coating that just wipes off. It's amazing stuff. And I think you'll find that gun parts lubricated with it are going to be the wave of the future. Joe?
Well, one quick question just to get out of the way. People are wondering about the 1.93 and the 2.04 super precision mounts.
Okay. Heights of scope mounts. Why are they the height that they are? Most of our scope mounts are 1.54 inches high. How come that is? It's basically a height that's been selected by the U.S. Army to work with thermal sights and night vision components. So if it's 1.54, it's compatible with auxiliary optics that go in front of a day optic. Now, it's also a good height for most normal shooting. It seems like it works real well. And the genesis of the 1.54 is this. If you go to the Remington MSR rifle or the XM 2010, okay? These are the chassis rifles that Remington made, all right? If you put a 1.54 high mount on those guns, the distance from the center line of the scope to the center line of the barrel is 3 inches, even. And this is a handy number to put in your ballistic computer, your Kestrel. I believe that's where this exact 1.54 came from, okay? So, for some folks have asked us for higher mounts. Some folks have asked us for lower mounts. Our national match mounts that are used in high power shooting. John Hollinger at White Oak Precision has 1.450 and 1.485 and 1.385 high mounts that correspond to the height of the A2 iron sight aperture above the bore at 600 yards and at 200 yards. You can choose. We do this only for John Hollinger, White Oak Armament. We have our 1.3 inch high power mount. Okay, we've also made 1.350 during the prototype stage. I love these mounts. To me, I can get a cheek weld with a 1.350 mount. Okay, and I love a strong cheek weld. In high power, you are not going to do anything unless you have a solid cheek weld on your A2 stock. And I love the 1.350. But a lot of folks want to keep their head erect. Military-wise, they want to be able to shoot with a gas mask, okay? And you need that higher height. So we have 1.93 and 2.10, if I'm not mistaken, mounts. 2.04? 2.04 mounts. We're getting them out slowly but surely. We have the 1.93. It's running right now on our milling machines. This is a 1.93 T1 and MRO mount. Those, you're going to be seeing those very soon.
And back to NCC, some people want to know how thick the coating is.
6 microns, about 2.5 10,000ths of an inch.
The other question is what is the coating like? Is it like mag phosphate? What's the finish of the coating like?
It's like a beautiful jewel from a jewelry house in Paris. That's what this is. And I'm not kidding you. It is a pearlescent, like an opal, and it just is lustrous. And when you coat, and this is the problem with this coating, because it turns your part that you coat with this thing into something that like should be in a museum, and I'm not kidding. And the issue is that there's some problems, you know, not everything is 100%. One thing on this coating is that if I coat a saw blade, it remains a saw blade. So if I have a gun part that doesn't have all the sharp edges taken off on this thing, this 82 Rockwell diamond coating doesn't particularly like sharp edges, and it can come off on very sharp points. And when you look at this magnificent jewel in front of your hands that's completely uniform in coating and in color, the smallest little tiny dot, you could see it in an instant. So when we coat parts, we have to go through a whole finishing process to knock all the sharp edges off. But that's what it's like. It's a beautiful, dark, pearlescent color.
The other questions are, can people send parts in to get them coated?
No. The reason is the surface of the steel part that gets coated has to be laboratory clean. We have an entire cleaning system that cleans these parts and makes them perfectly clean. And then as we load them into the machine, they are in a nitrogen gaseous cover. Okay, so the atmosphere does not even touch the parts until they go into the vacuum chamber where these parts are coated. This is a clean room environment. We build a clean room here in our shop, and it has to be like that. And anything that's coated at all, mag phosphate, blued, anything, nitride, it's difficult to coat it, and I don't think we're going to be coating things that have been coated before because of the problems that we've seen with adhesion. It has to be virgin metal.
That covered a lot of the NCC questions. I think we probably move on to the rest of the knives.
Okay. Abraham and Moses survival equipment. All right. My son Abraham, he asked me when he was 8 years old. He asked me if we could make a knife, and not just making a knife, we started a knife company. And I want this for my 2 boys. That's what it's named after, Abraham and my youngest. His name is Moses. He's 3 years old. All right, I named it after them. And you know, I want this company to be something that they can learn how to do business and how to treat the customer and how to interact with people. And this is my goal, is to have them, you know, work at this company and learn what business is like. And I made the investment, and we purchased knife making equipment from Germany, and it took about 1.5 years for this company to custom make it, and it's all robotic. Okay, we have robots that load and unload these machines, and it's able to produce very highly geometrically accurate knives. And the first knife that we made, I made in collaboration for a good friend of mine. His name is Lou Goodman. And if you want to ask Lou a question, I can get Lou on my cell phone here if you want to ask him a question, because he's watching this right now from his home, about 1,000 miles away. So if you have a question for Lou, please ask. Lou is a retired special operations soldier. He's a master knife maker. And combat knives has been his interest for a long time. And he has a special knife that he carried with him in combat, made by a really good friend of his. And this friend was killed in combat. And that's the knife that Lou carries. And there's a lot of design influence from that knife, all right, in this. And at some time, I'm going to have Lou and me, we're going to stand up here and we're going to talk about this knife that he designed and his influences and why this knife is the way it is. But if you have a question for Lou, just ask, and you know, we can call him on the phone and he can answer any questions. But this is it right here, the Lou Goodman Special Operations Combat Knife. 3D machined G10 handles. These are 3D machined, okay? Which means you have a cutter and it goes up and down all these hills and valleys, a small ball end mill, in order to make this type of handle that fits the human hand very well. It's got a ricasso right here. Lou wanted this for doing fine work. You know, as Lou told me, you know, there's different things that a knife for special operations that an operator would need. One of those is the ability to pry with it. Now, in 2006, I was at SHOT Show, and Bob Dozer, and he's a famous knife maker. I believe he was at the K-Bar booth, and he was signing these small folders for people, and everybody was waiting in line. And you could talk to Bob, and he would sign a knife for you. So, you know, I had just started making triggers, and I stood in line and came up to Mr. Dozer, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name. I believe that's how it's said. And he hand engraved this knife for me to my wife. And I asked him, I said, could I ask you a question about knife steels? And he said, sure. And I said, what do you, I know you like D2. I said, what do you think about L6? And he said, well, you make a knife with that, it's going to rust before it gets out of the shop. And Mr. Dozer stopped what he was doing, and he's a gentleman. He talked to me for 10 minutes about knife steels, gave me his advice on why he liked D2, how it reacted. He totally ignored this whole line of people, and I know these people in line were going to kill me, all right, for talking to Mr. Dozer, but he was a true gentleman, and I was humbled because he gave me this 10 minutes and talked to me about knife steels. And I'll never forget that. But one thing he said was, you know, when I talked about L6, he's like, well, why do you want to use L6? And I said, well, it would be better for prying. You know, it's a nickel-bearing steel. And he said, well, you cut with a knife. You don't pry with it. If you're going to pry with something, you know, you use a crowbar or something like that. That's why D2 is a good steel. I took that to heart. Now, when Lou and I were talking about knives and we were talking about knife steels, okay, one of the things Lou mentioned, now this is in the design specification of this knife, is you have to be able to pry. Because Lou, when he was active duty, would get himself in situations where he had to pry with his knife, and it was the only tool he had. Prying open glove boxes, prying open filing cabinets. He had to pry with the thing. So we needed a steel that you could put a bending force on and it wouldn't snap. On the other end of the spectrum, the knife had to be very sharp because as Lou termed it, some days you'd be cutting up charges for your explosive charges, and I guess you're cutting blocks of C4. I know I think it's easy. I've never done it, but I believe it's pretty easy. But there's all this cardboard to cut. You're cutting cardboard, all right? And that's kind of hard on some knives. I have knives that I purchased and I cut boxes open here in the shop. And I mean, I cut for 2 days and the thing's dull. Well, Lou wanted a knife that would hold its sharpness over time. When he's doing those things, he didn't have to sharpen continually. You know, a lot of folks that I hear, you know, they want a knife that's easy to sharpen, and that's cool. But if you take a 1095 knife, it doesn't last that long, and Lou wanted his knife to remain sharp, but at the same time, he wanted to be able to pry with it, and he wanted to be an extreme duty knife to handle anything that came his way. So the steel, and I did a lot of research on this that I wanted to use, it's called PD1. It's from Carpenter Steel. Carpenter's 45 minutes from here. They're a steel mill here in Reading, Pennsylvania. They've been in business for 127 years. PD1 stands for Punch Die 1. And I have the data sheet right here. You can download this yourself, find it online. Micro melt PD1 alloy. Now I'll read you the composition of this. 1.1% carbon, 1.2% silicon, 1.6% molybdenum, 1.1% tungsten, 0.25% manganese, 7.75% chromium. It's not high enough to be a stainless steel. 2.35% vanadium, the rest iron. This is an extremely highly alloyed steel, and it does a great job for this knife. Any questions, Joe?
No, everybody's just checking it out.
Okay.
A lot of good comments, but not many questions.
You'll notice this notch here in the knife. Our part of this whole knife project here at Geissele was I wanted to make a good sheath. And I've got knives and the sheaths are absolute garbage, okay? I don't want to take a beautiful knife that doesn't cost 10 bucks and take it out hunting and get back to the truck at the end of the day and look down and there's not a knife in your sheath because it fell out. And that's entirely possible on a lot of knives. As a gun designer, your focus is a lot on safety. You can't make something that is unsafe. And how anything that you make as it goes out into the wide world, you try to predict how this part or weapon or whatever you make is going to react in the wide world. But you don't see clearly. You see through a fog, and you try to peer through this fog and try to figure out how people are going to handle something and what kind of things would they do that you'd never think about doing, and how safe your mechanism is. So in a knife, I never liked these sheaths where if you pop the strap open and you jumped up and down, the knife would basically jump out and fall out. Okay, it's one thing if you lose it, it's another thing if you trip 5 miles away from the nearest road and you stab yourself. Okay, this is a design path that I didn't want to have happen with a knife that we made.
Guys, the Instagram feed has got a minute left on the maximum time. If it doesn't let us boot it back up, just jump over to Facebook and we'll continue it.
Okay, minute left, guys. Sorry,
Real quick before it goes out, everybody wants to know how much the knife is.
All right, the knife and sheath are 750 bucks. Okay, and we're probably going to be making a version without the sheath, which I can explain about that. That'll probably be cheaper. All right, but this is $750.
A lot of people want you to stab the knife into the table.
That's a beautiful maple table from Bally Block in Bally, Pennsylvania. Wait.
And that answered another question.
Hold
So
on.
that was something
Yeah, Bally, PA, man. Right down the street. They're actually probably 20 minutes from Carpenter Steel. Okay? These guys make these tops. You can get them from them cheap, and then you buy legs from MSC, and you make yourself beautiful butcher block tables on the cheap. Bally Block, Bally, PA.
Price one more time?
$750. All serial numbered. Okay, we continue on?
Yep, on to the next one.
All right. This sheath right here locks in place. You'll notice the harder you pull this knife, the harder it stays in there until this button right here, you press it, and out comes the knife. All you got to do is put this guy in there and it locks in place. You've got the full handle that you're able to grab right here, and we make this sheath out of 7075 T6 aluminum. 7075 aluminum is a very high strength aluminum. It was developed by Sumitomo. It's a Japanese company in World War II. It was first used on the Zero fighter. If you've ever seen any crash Zeros out in the Pacific, you'll notice that the aluminum on these guys are painted with a greenish yellowish paint. It's a very corrosion resistant paint. One thing about 7075 is it's not the most corrosion resistant aluminum. That's why you always see it anodized. You don't see it with any type of coating on it. But we take this block of aluminum right here, okay? Alcoa Messina is the plant that it's made at. 30 ounces. We turn it into this, 1.8 ounces. This is the cover. This is all highly machined. You can see all the beautiful machining marks inside this guy. As we machine this on our 5-axis milling machines, it's light as a feather. It has these stiffeners up top. Look at all the machining marks going around this guy. All the 3D machining on all these angles, all these cross holds, the beautiful magwell type of structure up here that'll guide your knife into the sheath. This is the cover. Inside the cover is a nylon liner. That's what holds against your sheath, against your knife. And then on the back, there's a 7075 T6 back. You'll notice it has holes and slots to tie it in with paracord or straps into your gear. We also have this, you'll see this black attachment right here. The knife comes with 2 of them. This is a molly attachment that you could thread these molly straps through in order to attach it to molly gear on a vest or on a pack. There's also a knife, a belt attachment with an adjustment for your belt. It is not a clip, okay? You have to thread your belt through it, and it has an adjustment in this where you can go up and down so it fits your belt tightly, so there's none of this jerking around when you go to draw your knife, okay? Right here, out it comes, put it right back in. Now, one thing Lou wanted is he wanted a choice between having a knife lock in and also have it a friction lock. So each knife will come not only with 2 backing plates, one for molly gear and one for your belt loop, but also come with 2 of these buttons. All you have to do is pop the shaft out with a little paper clip, and you can put the other button on, which is a friction button. And now this is a lock button, but basically you'll see the knife doesn't come out. It's held in with friction, and you can just pull it out. So whatever way you want to configure your knife, it's going to be extremely flexible. And this is the sheath of the future right here. When you see it in person, we're going to have these guys. We're going to have these machine parts that you can see out on our table at SHOT Show. I think you'll find it just beautiful work of machining art. And I think you'll really like this knife, Lou Goodman's Special Operations Combat Knife.
Guys, one more call out for the tabletops.
I'm not going to stab in my tabletop, but
They want to know where the table is from.
It's Bally Block.
Bally Block, Bally, it's Bally, PA.
B-A-L-L-Y.
B-A-L-L-Y, okay, Bally Block. And they make these guys out of black walnut, eucalyptus, okay. Our conference room table comes from Bally Block. Conference room tables are big bucks, okay? 10 grand, $15,000, $20,000. No way I'd spend that kind of money on a table for a conference room. I called up Bally Block, and I'm like, look, how long is that table, Joe?
At least
12, 15 feet? 12, 15 feet long. I wanted a nice giant piece of black walnut. It's solid. This isn't a laminate, okay? in black walnut, and they made these beautiful maple legs. It was 1,700 bucks, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And they make it in all different kinds of custom sizes, and the edge, okay, you want a semi-bull nose, okay? That's comfortable for your hands. A bull nose is big and rounded. This is a semi-bull nose. This is what you want for comfort.
Shot show tops are also Valley Block.
Yeah, at SHOT Show or booth, they're going to be Bally Block too, so you can come and see what they look like. So you can order them, they ship them, and you buy legs from MSC. Manhattan Supply Company is their old name, and the legs are something like 60 bucks, and you just lag screw it, and you got stiffeners, and you got yourself an awesome reloading bench. This is maple. This is their standard top, and if you talk to them and you don't mind a blem, they'll give you a blem. I know I sound like a salesman for them, but you know, we got, I don't know how many of these things we got around the shop. You know, we probably got a whole bunch. Anyways.
We might have to queue up the phone number or something, huh?
Bally Block, Bally PA, okay? They're even closer to Carpenter Steel than we are.
All right, keep the ball rolling.
All right. I know I'm blabbing on here, okay? Well, this kind of got goofed up. Okay. Here is the number one. This is Abraham and Moses' first hunting style knife. This was designed by Neil, okay, the Flying Dutchman. All right, it's skeletonized underneath the G10 handles, and it is a classic drop point design. This one here is PD1, about 200,000 stick. I think we're going to move toward one of the Carpenter stainlesses in production, and the 3/16 .188 thick knife. I think that's what we're going to wind up doing. But again, it's got 3D machine handles. You can see how beautiful that fits your hand. It's got a small hilt right here, and we are, at least this first version, it is not going to be nano weapon coated, and this is going to come with a leather sheath. It's not going to come with the aluminum sheath for the Goodman knife.
A lot of guys are wondering what the balance of the knife is like.
Where's the balance point?
We're working on that too, but it's really balanced. Feels
Somewhere
good in
around
the hand.
here, I guess.
Like I mean, it's tough to balance it because the balance point's right where that hilt is, which
Yeah.
is where you want it.
Okay, it's trying to fall forward right now. There it is. That's the balance point. Okay, these will be out on the show. And listen, this is our, this is our first knife. I know you guys, a lot of you knife guys have been in this a lot longer than I have, and if you have suggestions or something you want to see, I am all ears. You just send it to, sales@geissele.com, and that's the best way to reach me by email, and we'll listen to anything that anybody has to say. Okay?
A lot of people want to know the price of that knife.
I don't know. I think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 bucks with a sheath. All the knives are going to come with a sheath. They're not going to come without a sheath.
We're going to let us know if we're going to have a resharpening program. I don't know if we've given that thought.
I haven't given it a thought, but yes, if you want your knife resharpened at the factory, we will resharpen it. That's not a problem. And we won't charge for it other than possibly shipping back to you. Okay, now let's go over what we're going to be doing at SHOT Show. Okay? Monday's range day, media day at the range. We have a booth there where we have all our new triggers and all our new gear out there, okay? At range day, if you come to see us, this is our annual SHOT Show range day shirt. There you go. It's got the logos of all the companies, ALG Defense, it's my wife's company, NCC, Nano Composite Coatings, Abraham and Moses Survival Equipment, okay? These are free at the range day. When you come to the Geissele booth, we're going to have these awesome badge holders that we're going to give out for free. We actually have an engineering drawing on these guys, okay? Geissele, all the three logos of our sister companies, opens up so you can put your badge in it. And on the back, you have a pen holder and a holder for your business cards that they stick up so they don't get jammed up in there. Okay, these are free. Just come to the booth and you can get one of these guys. We have camo and we have tan, and they're free. We also are going to have small packets of Go Juice and very thin grease. These are little blister packs. Joe, you got any around here?
I don't think we're able to
All right.
down the box. A lot of them made their way to SHOT.
Well, they're all on the way to SHOT Show, boxes of them. So you can get these very thin very, very small packages of the oil and grease in case you want to try it. Okay, they're going to be given away for free. We're also going to have stickers, our Forgotten Country bumper stickers. All that's going to be there for free. We're also going to have these really cool posters, okay? These guys were designed in-house by Diego, who's our manager of our creative department. And every day at Chacho, we're going to be giving one of these guys away. And they're serialized down here. Okay, this is 15 of 2,000. These are free. Okay? So every day, starting on Tuesday, you can come by and get yourself a free poster. That's Tuesdays. This is Wednesdays. This is Thursdays, showcasing our Super Select Fire Trigger. This is Fridays. And this here is a special, very limited edition poster. You get this any day by going to the booth and saying, I want super precision, or get some super precision. You tell that to all the guys behind the booth, they'll give this to you. But if you don't say it, you can't get it. Okay? Now, when you come to the booth, we're going to have VIP cards, and these are free. You can come by and get these guys. And with these guys, you can go on our website, and you can get Geissele products at 35% off, 35% off SSA and SSAEs, and also 30% off all ALG products. Just come by and pick these guys up, okay? Now, there's a time limit on these guys. What is it, Joe?
2 weeks after the show ends.
2 weeks after the show ends, these things die, okay? But 2 weeks after the show, they're good. You could use it to get a nice discount on any Geissele gear you want. You'll notice that also on the back, okay, there's a promo code right here. You tear this guy off, all right? And you're going to put it in a bucket there at the Geissele booth. And this year we have a new booth. Again, it's got Bally block tables. But the big thing about this booth is one whole wall is reversible on a pivot, and it turns into a giant Plinko game. Okay, so 2 times a day, 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock, right?
11 o'clock and 3 o'clock.
11 o'clock and 3 o'clock. We are going to pull 5 of these cards. 3, 4? 3. I'm sorry. Joe's got this all dialed in.
3 at 11,
all right.
3 at 3.
Okay, 3 at 11, 3 at 3. We're gonna pull these out, and if you are there, and only if you're there only, you will get a chance for the Italian Princess or Dreamy Cowgirl is going to climb to the top of the booth, okay? And they're going to drop a Pinko puck where you tell them to. And as this thing goes down, we are going to have 7, right, Joe?
Yep, 7 slots.
7 slots, okay? On the outside, we have scope mounts. The next thing we have rails, triggers, okay? And you're going to win either a trigger or a rail or scope mount on all those 6 locations. But in the center is a weapon. And this is an AR-15. You queuing that up, Joe?
Steve's going to queue it up.
All right, Steve's going to queue that up. All right, we've got a beautiful AR-15 that we built. It's got a 13-inch Mark 13. That's our new rail on it. A primary arms red dot with a super precision mount for that guy. It's got an SSAE trigger, a 16-inch ALG barrel, which ALG has never sold, but it's a beautiful 16-inch Melonite barrel. That's a long story, but it's a beautiful mid-length barrel, mid-length gas system, and single chamber brake, okay? One is going to be raffled off 11 o'clock every day. One's going to be raffled off at 3. Only those tickets from that segment of time, okay, which goes from 3 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock, are going to be drawn from. After those 3 are drawn, these tickets are thrown away, and only those tickets new tickets that come back to go in there are going to be drawn from at 3 o'clock, okay? So that doesn't mean you can come by on Monday, throw one in, and it's good for all those days, okay? You got to keep coming by, you got to keep getting these, throw it in a bucket. It increases the likelihood of winning for those people who are going to be by the booth. and are going to throw this in, okay? So it's going to be a wonderful AR-15, and that means we are going to be giving away 8 guns. That's actually 9. 8 guns. If one isn't won with those 3 chances, we pull one of the prizes from the Plinko board, and that gun goes on there. So if the 11 o'clock doesn't win, the 3 o'clock has 2 guns on it. If the 3 o'clock doesn't win, the next day there's 3 guns on it, okay? And again, these tickets are free. And the 9th gun, all right, well, let me explain one thing. If you live in a banned state, you only get the upper, you don't get the lower. It was a huge hassle last year when we gave away a gun and we had the winner live in a banned state, and it was this big, huge mess. So the rules of this are, if you live in a banned state, you only get the upper, not the lower, all right? Right, exactly. So Joe, come on up and explain the 9th gun, okay? This is Joe Plunkett, he's our VP of Sales, and he's going to explain to you. Are you mic'd up, can you hear?
I'm not. I'm sure everybody can hear me through yours. Yours is pretty sensitive.
Okay.
All right. So, the 9th gun. I know everybody's been asking, what about me? I'm at home. How do I get in on this? We're going to be doing our 9th giveaway through AR-15 Thursday at 3 o'clock. Probably actually closer to 3:30, 3:45 with all the madness. Right after our 3 o'clock giveaway on Thursday. The Avila brothers are going to be at our booth, and they're going to represent the users at AR15.com. And we're going to drop a Plinko puck. We're going to select 5 people, okay, to drop the puck. If nobody wins, we will do another random generator, and that 6th person will automatically win. Basically, the way it's going to work, we are going to put up a thread on Monday.
General discussion, right?
It'll be in general discussion. We're going to post it in industry, but the giveaway is on the thread in GD, not in the industry forum. We are going to simply post a link in our industry forum over to GD. So the official giveaway thread will be in GD. It's going to run all week long. All you have to do, and you can do this, you can enter once a day. You just have to make a post. And the post just has to say either get some super precision or I want super precision. It's quite simple. If we do the random number generator, which we're going to do, we're going to set to 50. The first generation is going to be the page number. The second one's going to be the post number, and you win. If you win and it does not say get some super precision or I want super precision, you do not win. We'll move on to the next person. All right, that's how it's going to work. This way we can get you guys at home some stuff. Again, we're going to pick 5 guys. 1 gun being giveaway. If none of the 5 people win a gun, okay. Check the battery here.
Am I dying?
Maybe.
Do you want me to step in? Here you go.
Okay.
How about this one? This one working? Is that better? No? Is it crackling? Okay. All right. Well, I'll fix that in a minute. We're having some technical difficulties, but yep, that's the so that's the plan. Give me a minute here. Let me fix this, and I'll get you guys right back online. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. All right. So you look out for that thread in general discussion there.
Okay,
All right,
here.
hang on, I think we're good.
We good? That's Instagram? I thought that was over.
All right, we fixed it. We fixed
All right,
it.
here we go.
We're good.
Okay,
Sorry, guys.
all right, sorry.
everybody.
All right, look, first Geissele gun. Yes, many people have said that to us. You know, it's been a long time. People keep asking us about it, and we're just content here, you know, to make really good components for weapons. But we've finally made one. It's called the AG01, and my son Abraham made and designed this gun. Abraham, here it is. Okay, he did this himself. Okay, it's made out of duct tape. You'll notice the design influences of this guy. This is the 303 British magazine. You'll notice the trigger and trigger guard and the stock. What does that tell you? FG42, doesn't it? My gosh, that's awesome. You'll notice the sling, okay? And look at this. It's got a bolt action on it, and it's using the cartridge case to a 7.62 by 51. Where'd you pick up that round at the range, right?
Yep.
Okay, now this is the most awesome thing. It's got a bayonet mount. Is that cool? AG01, okay? Designer.
Questions about the price.
Price, oh my gosh, you don't want to know. This is big bucks, all right? So this is my son Abraham, and this is the first Geissele rifle.
Now, on a serious note, we did have a couple other questions.
Yeah, we'll go through it. Here you go, Abraham.
So the two most common ones were Glock trigger and Remington 700 trigger.
Okay, no plans for Glock trigger, okay? A lot of people doing it, a lot of smart people making triggers for the Glock. If we do something, it's got to be much better than what's out there. And like I said, there's a lot of smart people making triggers for the Glock weapon. Zev Technologies, that's one of them. My good friend Mike works for them. I want to give a shout out to them here, all right? Remington 700 trigger. We make a Remington 700 trigger. We sell it to the U.S. military. It is the only trigger that has ever passed the rigorous drop testing with a full kit, full magazine, full scope, full everything from 5 feet onto concrete with the safety off. It's an excellent trigger, but the way we made it, I don't think it's going to be up to the standards of civilian shooters. It is a military sniper trigger. It's hard to explain, but you never know what's going to happen this year. All right, I'll give you a piece of wisdom. All right, from Bill Geissele, you never know what the next day is going to bring, and that applies to us here. So stay tuned, and maybe something will happen in the Remington 700 arena.
I don't have any specific questions coming in.
Oh, wait. Okay, you're going to see something on this. Okay.
Meanwhile, guys, ask your questions while he goes through this, and then when he's done, I'll try to ask a bunch of
Okay.
as much as I can.
G jerky. All right. All right. The sister of Matt, or one of the guys who work in the shipping department, she makes awesome beef jerky. She does it in her home in the northeast section of Philadelphia, and we got these pound bags of beef jerky, and we were going to bring them to SHOT. We're still going to bring some pound bags of this stuff. That's awesome. Okay, G jerky. Okay, made by Edelweiss Beef Jerky Company. I say Edelweiss, it's supposed to be Edelweiss, as my wife always tells me. She's a fan of the Sound of Music. Okay, but we say Edelweiss in New Jersey, where I'm from. Okay, but we had some technical difficulties, and what happened was all the beef jerky was eaten by the guys here in the shop. So we're not going to have that much there at the show, but it does say G jerky on the back. We're just not going to have any to give away, but it's good stuff.
People are wondering about the possibility of a scope mount from ALG.
You know, when it comes to scope mounts, and you start making a scope mount, if you don't do it right, the scope mount moves around. That's why on a lot of scope mounts you see out there, you pull them off and you see fretting. All right, fretting is microscopic movement of a mechanical part. And you look at the bottom of the scope mount and you'll see the imprint of a Picatinny rail into the scope mount. Now what we've done is we've built a tester here to determine the clamp force of scope mounts. And we found that many scope mounts on the market only clamp with 100 to 170 pounds of force, where the Super Precision line clamps with somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 pounds of force. It's completely different. It's much more secure. The military customers that we've made the Super Precision line for, they love it. They love its superior return to zero and the confidence and security that these scope mounts produce, especially as they're machined from a solid block of aluminum. So the design challenge with ALG is the fundamental one when it comes to engineering. It's easier to make something expensive than it is to make something inexpensive, especially if you want some performance to that inexpensive type thing. Yes, we could do something like some of these offshore mounts that you see out there, which basically are total junk. I can't do that. If it comes from ALG, ALG gives you a square deal, and it has to be something really good. And that's going to take a significant amount of engineering effort. The Flying Dutchman will probably lead that effort because he is Mr. Super Precision, not me. That's Neil McKillips, Mr. Super Precision, all right, because he's the one who designed the thing. All right, we do it together, okay, but Neil was the leader in this. So maybe someday we'll do it, but it's got to be something good if it's going to come from ALG.
Next question is, what about 308 rails?
This is a rail for the DPMS Gen 2. You'll notice it's Mark 1-ish. We did this for a special customer. It's a beautiful rail, fits this gun perfectly. You'll notice how the anti-rotation mounts fit in exactly into the receiver. It's very secure. We got to get this guy going, I know that. We do have 308 rails. We've made them for, again, you know, you don't see a lot of things that Geissele does because we do a lot of research work for the US government. And we have Mark IV type 308 rails, we have Mark I type. The problem is there's no set specifications and standards for these 7.62 guns. You have an SR25 spec, you have an AR-10 spec, which is different. You have an LR308 DPMS spec. We make a rail, you got to kind of make it for all three, and each one needs its own tooling. And once you start making all these different variations of things, it becomes much more difficult, much harder to make it. And in the limited numbers that I think a 308 rail would make, I think it would be prohibitively expensive. And I'm hesitant to bring something out to market that's difficult to communicate how difficult it is to make it in low quantity. Maybe this year we'll do it. We have it all designed. We have some of the tooling in-house, but it's something I don't know if the market is there for a Geissele 308 rail. We'll see.
Some of the cold warriors want to know what your favorite soda is.
Mexican Coke. And look, I'm diabetic, and I drink 4 Mexican Cokes a year, each one on my child's birthday. Okay, this is it right here. I love this stuff. Okay, Mexican Coke from Mexico.
That's what pills are for, Bill.
Huh?
That's what pills are for.
I know, but the next thing you know, I keep taking more and more and more insulin, and then your blood sugar starts to jack up, and then you can get lows. And 4 a year, that's all I drink. At least that's what I tell everybody.
I think that's just about it.
All right.
I don't see many more questions.
All right, everyone. Look, thanks for watching. I appreciate you tuning in and spending time with us.
Real quick, we just got one. Someone on Instagram wants to know if we would entertain a small run of G2 handguards like we did with the SR25.
Maybe. I got to see how many we have, okay? Dreamy Cowgirl runs our assembly department, and she has a lot of these things stashed, okay? She stashes them because, I come to her and I'm like, hey, I need something. So maybe I'll ask her and see what she has, in her stash here. Maybe we have them made already, but I'll check into it. All right. Look, thanks for spending time with us tonight, everyone. I just want to wish you the best in 2017. We're looking forward to launching all our new products. The SSP is going to be ready in 3 weeks. It will be shipping in 3 weeks, God willing, and all our other new stuff will be along shortly thereafter. So thanks for watching tonight, and I appreciate it. And I hope to see you at SHOT Show 2017.